welcome to this video, this live stream of Thriving Thursday. Happy Thursday. I hope your Thursday started off well. If it didn't, what do you need in order for it to become better? That would be the question that I have to ask. What needs to happen? And if it's not possible within your control, your sphere of influence, then what within your sphere of influence, within your personal area of control, what can you do to make it better? That's a question right there. And with that, this is a continuation of the reading of Awaken, the Giant Within, over 1 million copies sold, how to take immediate control of your mental, emotional, physical, and financial destiny. Really powerful words and very succinct there on this concept of what it is that we need to take control of our lives, of our careers, of our mental state, our physical body, and all of these things. And how do you master all of that? So this book provides a lot of tools. We're on about chapter 5 right now, and this book provides a lot of tools on how to do those things. Someone asked the other day if it's going to help them levitate, and this is not a book on levitation, and it's one of those things where the real question should be, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to achieve? And as you're reading a book like this or listening to a stream like this, the question would be, what is it that you want from this book? So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start reading, continuing on from here. But starting on this section, Neuroscience, your ticket to lasting change. Great breakthroughs in our ability to understand the human mind are now available because of a marriage between two widely different fields: neurobiology, the study of how the brain works, and computer science. The integration of these sciences has created the discipline of neuroscience. Neuroscientists study how neuroassociations occur and have discovered that neurons are constantly sending electrochemical messages back and forth across neural pathways. Not unlike traffic on a busy thoroughfare, this communication is happening all at once. Each idea or memory moving along its own path, while literally billions of other impulses are traveling in individual directions. This arrangement enables us to hopscotch mentally from memories of the piney smell of an evergreen forest after a rain to the haunting melody of a favorite Broadway musical, to painstakingly detailed plans of an evening with a loved one, to the exquisite size and texture of a newborn baby's thumb. Not only does this complex system allow us to enjoy the beauty of our world, it also helps us to survive in it. Each time we experience a significant amount of pain or pleasure, our brains search for the cause and record it in our nervous systems to enable us to make better decisions about what to do in the future. For example, without a neuro association in your brain to remind you that sticking your hand into an open flame would burn you, you could conceivably make this mistake again and again until your hand is severely burned. Thus, neuroassociations quickly provide our brains with the signals that help us to re-access our memories and safely maneuver us through our lives. So neuroscience, neuro pathways, neuroassociations. So that's really interesting. Each time we experience a significant amount of pain or pleasure, our brains search for the cause and record it in our nervous systems to enable us to make better decisions about what to do in the future. Really helpful idea there, just to think about all the things that are associated with the things that bring us pleasure or pain in our lives. So here's an image here. It's pretty interesting. Take a second to let it sink in for a moment. You might need to take a pause or whatever later on in this video, or order the book. An intricate thought network. So it's saying that it looks like learning, it provides knowledge, it takes place in university. I think it really takes place in life, but with that said, it takes place in seminars, our fun is often contagious. Learning provides knowledge required for jobs, make money, to buy cars and things like that. Car has colors. Car has tires made from rubber trees. I don't know. I totally forgot that rubber comes from trees. But our trees, which used to make paper, used in making books. Okay, cool. So that was just a guide on how thoughts happen, a network of thoughts. Interesting. Okay. So, to dull the mind, all nature is leaden. To the illumined mind, the whole world burns and sparkles with light. When we do something for the first time, we create a physical connection, a thin neural strand that allows us to re-access that emotion or behavior again in the future. Think of it this way. Each time we repeat the behavior, the connection strengthens. We add another strand to our neural connection. With enough repetitions and emotional intensity, we can add many strands simultaneously, increasing the tensile strength of this emotional or behavioral pattern until eventually we have a trunk line to this behavior or feeling. This is when we find ourselves compelled to feel these feelings or behave in this way consistently. In other words, this connection becomes what I've already labeled a neural superhighway that will take us down an automatic and consistent route of behavior. This neuroassociation is a biological reality. It's physical. Again, this is why thinking our way into a change is usually ineffective. Our neuroassociations are a survival tool, and they are secured in our nervous systems as physical connections rather than as intangible memories. Michael Merzenich of the University of California, San Francisco, has scientifically proven that the more we indulge in any pattern of behavior, the stronger the pattern becomes. Wow. Really interesting stuff right there. Biological reality. Scientifically proven. Really interesting to think on the subject that it's really true that, we can't think our ways to solving some of our habits. We really have to understand some of these ideas. So to continue, Merzenich mapped the specific areas in a monkey's brain that were activated when a certain finger in the monkey's hand was touched. He then trained one monkey to use this finger predominantly in order to earn its food. When Merzenich remapped the touch-activated areas in the monkey's brain, he found that the area responding to the signals from that finger's additional use had expanded in size nearly 600%. Now the monkey continued the behavior even when he was no longer rewarded because the neural pathway was so strongly established. Wow. An illustration of this in human behavior might be that of a person who no longer enjoys smoking but still feels a compulsion to do so. Why would this be the case? The person is physically wired to smoke. This explains why you may have found it difficult to create a change in your emotional patterns or behaviors in the past. You didn't merely have a habit. You had created a network of strong neuroassociations within your nervous system. We unconsciously develop these neuroassociations by allowing ourselves to indulge in emotions or behaviors on a consistent basis. Each time you indulge in the emotion of anger or the behavior of yelling at a loved one, you reinforce the neural connection and increase the likelihood that you'll do it again. The good news is this. Research has also shown that when the monkey was forced to stop using this finger, the area of the brain where these neural connections were made actually began to shrink in size, and therefore the neuroassociation weakened. This is good news for those who want to change their habits. If you'll just stop indulging in a particular behavior or emotion long enough, if you just interrupt your pattern of using the old pathway for a long enough period of time, the neural connection will weaken and atrophy. Thus, the disempowering emotional pattern or behavior disappears with it. We should remember this also means that if you don't use your passion, it's going to dwindle. Remember, courage unused diminishes. Commitment unexercised wanes. Love unshared dissipates. Oh my goodness, those are some words of wisdom right there at the end. Courage unused diminishes. Commitment unexercised wanes. Love unshared dissipates. That's as scary as it is powerful to just think that anything that we do, anything that we love, anything that we can take for, that are great for us, that we can take for granted, ultimately, if you don't use it, you do lose it. And it's not just about losing like a body part or failing to do something, but this idea that things diminish. Scary idea, especially as you get older. So here's a quote to start off this next page. It's not enough to have a good mind. The main thing is to use it well. Simple enough explanation there. It's not enough to have a good mind. The main thing is to use it well. So how can we all use our minds better? That's a powerful question. What can we create? What can we build? What can we do for ourselves? What Twitch streams can we create? What the science of neuroassociative conditioning offers is 6 steps that are specifically designed to change behavior by breaking patterns that disempower you. But first, we must understand how the brain makes a neuroassociation in the first place. Anytime you experience significant amounts of pain or pleasure, your brain immediately searches for the cause. It uses the following 3 criteria. 1. Your brain looks for something that appears to be unique. To narrow down the likely causes, the brain tries to distinguish something that is unusual to the circumstance. It seems logical that if you're having unusual feelings, there must be an unusual criteria. Your brain looks for something that appears to be unique. To narrow down the likely causes, the brain tries to distinguish something that is unusual to the circumstance. It seems logical that if you're having unusual feelings, there must be an unusual cause. 2. Your brain looks for something that seems to be happening simultaneously. This is known in psychology circles as the law of recency. Doesn't it make sense that what occurs in a moment or close proximity to it of intense pleasure or pain is probably the cause of that sensation? So something that happens unique, seems logical, unique. So we're going to circle that word. So something unique, something happened simultaneously or recency. And then the last one is consistency. 3rd, your brain looks for consistency. If you're feeling pain or pleasure, your brain begins to immediately notice what around you is unique and is happening simultaneously. If the element that meets these 2 criteria also seem to occur consistently whenever you feel this pain or pleasure, then you can be sure that your brain will determine that it is the cause. The challenge in this, of course, is that when we feel enough pain or pleasure, we tend to generalize about consistency. I'm sure you've had someone say to you, "You always do that," after you've done something for the first time. Perhaps you've even said it to yourself. Because the 3 criteria for forming neuroassociations are so imprecise, it is very easy to fall prey to misinterpretations and create what I call false neuroassociations. That's why we must evaluate linkages before they become a part of our unconscious decision-making process. So often we blame the wrong cause and thereby close ourselves off from possible solutions. I once knew a woman, a very successful artist, who hadn't had a relationship with a man for 12 years. Now, this woman was extremely passionate about everything she did. It's what made her such a great artist. However, when her relationship ended and she found herself in massive pain, her brain immediately searched for the cause. It searched for something that was unique to this relationship. Her brain noted that the relationship had been especially passionate. Instead of identifying it as one of the beautiful parts of the relationship, she began to think that this was the reason that the relationship ended. Her brain also looked for something that was simultaneous to the pain. Again, it noted that there had been a great deal of passion right before it had ended. When she looked for something that was consistent, again passion was pinpointed as the culprit. Because passion met all three criteria, her brain decided that it must be the reason the relationship ended painfully. Having linked this as the cause, she resolved never to feel that level of passion in a relationship again. This is a classic example of a false neuroassociation. She had linked up a false cause, and this was now guiding her current behaviors and crippling the potential for a better relationship in the future. The real culprit in her relationship was that she and her partner had different values and rules. But because she linked pain to her passion, she avoided it at all costs, not only in relationships, but even in her art. The quality of her entire life began to suffer. This is a perfect example of the strange ways in which we sometimes wire ourselves. You and I must understand how our brain makes associations and question many of those connections that we've just accepted that may be limiting our lives. Otherwise, in our personal and professional lives, we are destined to feel unfulfilled and frustrated. So that's a pretty strong idea just in itself. This idea of, thinking of the things that we want in life, whether it be that relationship, whether it be physical fitness, whether it be a more money, whether it be some of our goals, such as, becoming an author, pursuing a career as an artist or something like that. And to really think about if we've tried it, for those of you who haven't tried it, that's one thing, but for those of you who have tried to have a good relationship or have tried to pursue an art career or have tried to pursue an ambitious goal but failed, and to really think about what we associate with that failure. That's a powerful question right there. What have I associated, or what have you associated? What have we associated with our past failures, and how does that affect us in the present? What are we associating? In the past, do I associate failure with and blame it on somebody or something? Many people blame things on their parents. You're the reason I'm like this. You did this to me. And maybe some things are justified. More specifically, some things that they might have done to you specifically. But on the other hand, what else was in that situation? Say we blame our parents, which is a common thing to blame for our lives and the way we are. And in that question, or even in the workplace, it's somebody else's fault. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. Whatever that is. Or brothers, sisters. I didn't do it. It was Jimmy. That's just a made-up name. But as we consider this, what else was there? What else do we associate in that moment of failure? Let's say we do blame our parents or whoever for the pain or pleasure in our lives, and what else was there? Was our sibling there in that environment? Was it the house? Do we feel like living in a small house brings pain, or do we feel like living in a big house does not necessarily mean happiness because there wasn't a happiness as a child, right? I'm just making stuff up here. If it touches close to home, that's a whole different situation. But just considering it doesn't always have to be a specific person. If we really think about it, it might be other factors in that environment that may have caused the pain or the pleasure, or may have been a result of our association with pain or pleasure. Some good questions to ask as we're reading through this. So, a source of self-sabotage. Oof, that's going to be a good section, because self-sabotage is huge. I can only imagine how many people have not reached their destination that they want to be simply because they feel they've been self-sabotaging themselves. So this is going to be powerful even for myself here. A source of self-sabotage. Even more insidious are mixed neuroassociations. The classic source of self-sabotage. If you've ever found yourself starting to accomplish something and then destroying it, we're talking about self-sabotage right now as it pertains to taking control, immediate control of your emotional, physical, mental, and financial destiny. I think this is a huge area. So, a source of self-sabotage. Even more insidious are mixed neuroassociations, the classic source of self-sabotage. If you've ever found yourself starting to accomplish something and then destroying it, mixed neuroassociations are usually the culprit. Perhaps your business has been moving in fits and starts, flourishing one day and then floundering the next. What is this all about? It's a case of associating both pain and pleasure to the same situation. One example a lot of us can relate to is money. In our culture, people have incredibly mixed associations to wealth. There's no doubt that people want money. They think it would provide them with more freedom, more security, a chance to contribute, a chance to travel, to learn, to expand, to make a difference. But simultaneously, most people never climb above a certain earnings plateau because deep down they associate having excess money, that's excess in quotations, to a lot of negatives. They associate it to greed, to being judged, to stress, with immorality, or a lack of spirituality. One of the first exercises I ask people to do in my financial destiny seminars is to brainstorm all the positive associations they have to wealth as well as all the negative ones. On the plus side, they write down such things as freedom, luxury, contribution, happiness, security, travel, opportunity, or making a difference. But on the minus side, which is usually more full, they write down such things as fights with spouse, stress, guilt, sleepless nights, intense effort, greed, shallowness, and complacency, being judged, and taxes. Do you notice a difference in intensity between the two sets of neuroassociations? Which do you think plays a stronger role in their lives? And there's an image here. The pain and pleasure continuum. Greed. On one side, you got greed and these powerful ideas. And that's a good time to take a pause. What do you associate with having more money? And chances are, if you do associate a great level of pleasure with having more money, you probably have more of it, or you're able to enjoy more of it. But if you have more pain from it, chances are you might not. I mean, that's a powerful idea there. You know, those things that give us pleasure the most are the things that we end up pursuing the most. So, when you're deciding what to do, if your brain doesn't have a clear signal of what equals pain and what equals pleasure, it goes into overload and becomes confused. As a result, you lose momentum and the power to take the decisive actions that could give you what you want. When you give your brain mixed messages, you're going to get mixed results. Think of your brain's decision-making process as being like a scale. If I were to do this, would it mean pain or pleasure? And remember, it's not just the number of factors on each side, but the weight they individually carry. It's possible that you could have more pleasurable than painful associations about money, but if just one of the negative associations is very intense, then that false neuroassociation can wipe out your ability to succeed financially. The pain barrier. What happens when you get to a point where you feel that you're going to have pain no matter what you do? I call this the pain barrier. Often when this occurs, we become immobilized. We don't know what to do. Usually we choose what we believe will be the least painful alternative. Some people, however, allow this pain to overwhelm them completely and they experience learned helplessness. Using the 6 steps of NAC will help you interrupt these disempowering patterns. You will create alternative pathways so that you're not just wishing away an undesired behavior or overriding it in the short term, but you are actually rewiring yourself to feel and behave consistent, excuse me, with your new empowering choices. Without changing what you link pain and pleasure to in your nervous system, no change will last. After you read and understand the following 6 steps, I challenge you to choose something that you want to change in your life right now. Take action and follow through with each of the steps you're about to learn so that you not only read the chapter, but you produce changes as the result of reading it. Let's begin to learn. Alright, so chapter 6 here. How to change anything in your life. The science of neuroassociative conditioning. The beginning of a habit is like an invisible thread, but every time we repeat the act, we strengthen the strand. Add to it another filament until it becomes a great cable and binds us irrevocably through thought and act. Orison Swett Marden. That's a name you don't hear too often in the personal development space, yet they had a huge impact on the personal growth space. So, with that said, let's find out how we can change anything in our lives, the science of neuroassociated conditioning. If you and I want to change our behavior, there is only one effective way to do it. We must link unbearable and immediate sensations of pain to our old behavior and incredible and immediate sensations of pleasure to a new one. Think about it this way. All of us, through the experience of life, have learned certain patterns of thinking and behaving to get ourselves out of pain and into pleasure. We all experience emotions like boredom or frustration or anger or feeling overwhelmed and develop strategies for ending these feelings. Some people use shopping, some people use food, some use sex, some use drugs, some use alcohol, some use yelling at their kids. They know consciously or unconsciously that this neural pathway will relieve their pain and take them to some level of pleasure in the moment. Whatever the strategy, if you and I are going to change it, we have to go through 6 simple steps, the outcome of which is to find a more direct and empowering way to get out of pain and into pleasure, ways that will be more effective and elegant. These 6 steps of NAC will show you how to create a direct highway out of pain and into pleasure with no disempowering detours. They are. So before we go into this, I'd like to just take a second and think about, what the things that he just mentioned. So some people, to develop strategies for ending certain feelings. Some people use shopping, some people use food, some use sex, some use drugs, some use alcohol, some use yelling at their kids. And this is an important time to really consider what it is that we're associating. Now, I think some of these things are bad and they can be financially painful, but other things I don't think are so bad, right? Like, what's wrong with shopping? What's wrong with sex? And these other things can be harmful, right? Like using drugs, alcohol, yelling at your kids, and food can be harmful if it's a huge detriment to your physical health. But at the same time, right, really to think about what it is that we really want to change. Is it that we want to, let's use sex for example, since it's being used right here. Most people don't want to give up sex. And I doubt that Tony Robbins is trying to get people to give up sex or give up shopping. But if it is, and most of us I think have a healthy level of that. But if it is not helping you, if shopping is negatively affecting your relationships, or sex is not helping you find the relationships that you truly want, or maybe it's literally causing physical harm through whatever, right? Then that can be a potential downfall. But in this situation, he's associating those with negative ideas. I tend to want to try to build more positive habits. So, really take a second to consider what you're considering positive, what you're considering negative, and this is ultimately going to help you change in that area. So let's see what he has to say. The NAC Master Step 1. Neuro-associative conditioning Step 1. Oh, well, he's exactly sharing what I just considered. Decide what you really want and what's preventing you from having it now. Right now. Right? What is preventing you from having it right now? You'd be surprised how many people came to me for private therapeutic work. I asked them what they wanted. They spent 20 minutes. And I just spent like 20 minutes talking about it, but they spent 20 minutes telling me what they didn't want. Or what they no longer wanted to experience. We've got to remember that we get whatever we focus on in life. If we keep focusing on what we don't want, we'll have more of it. The first step to creating any change is deciding what you do want so that you have something to move toward. The more specific you can be about what you want, the more clarity you will have. And the more power you will command to achieve what you want more rapidly. We also must learn what's preventing us from having what we want. Invariably, what's preventing us from making the change is that we link more pain to making a change than to staying where we are. We either have a belief, like if I change I will have pain, or we fear the unknown that change might bring. So that's a really great question right now. What is it that I really want right now? And I'm glad to do this exercise with you as you're watching this. I've got a notepad right here, and I'm about to start writing, and I'll even share my idea publicly. What is it that I want right now? What is it that I really want? And this, just thinking about that question, that is a really hard question to answer. What is it that I really, really want right now? Because at the surface level, you think like, okay, well, I want to grow my Twitch channel. That's an example right now. And, what do I want from that? Right? You could really go deeper. What is it that you really want? What do I want right now? What's preventing me from having it? That's a really cool question. It's hard to answer, like, what's preventing me from having it? Maybe it's my, comfort at advertising on all the major social media platforms, or maybe it's a feeling of, what if my videos are not good enough, right? So these are what's preventing me. It's really ultimately myself. It's not really money. I can continue. I mean, yes, money. I need to do side jobs in order to be able to stream on Twitch, right? But it's really good to dive a little deeper into what's preventing me from having it right now, what's preventing you from having what you really want right now. And of course, money's always there, right? I want to make more money. I want to be able to make money doing things that that can interest people, that can help people, that can add value to people's lives, such as doing this type of reading these interesting books or sharing these ideas with people. So what's really preventing? I mean, nothing's preventing me from doing this right now, but I guess this is something that I want, and unfortunately, this might not be the best example because I'm working on it right now, as opposed to struggling to find the motivation to work on it. So there you go. NAC Master Step 1. NAC Master Step 2. Get leverage. Associate massive pain to not changing now and add massive pleasure to the experience of changing now. Most people know that they really want to change, yet they just can't get themselves to do it. And here's the thing, decide what I really want. Make better videos. That's probably something that I want. And the only thing preventing me from having it right now is that I'm in the middle of a stream. So in your life, what is something that you really want? What is something that's preventing you from having it now? And how can you associate massive pain to not changing it now and massive pleasure to the experience of changing now? Most people know that they really want to change, yet they just can't get themselves to do it. But change is usually not a question of capability. It's almost always a question of motivation. If someone put a gun to our heads and said, "You better get out of that depressed state and start feeling happy now," I bet any one of us could find a way to change our emotional state for the moment under these circumstances. But the problem, as I've said, is that change is often a should and not a must, or it's a must, but it's a must for someday. The only way we're going to make a change now is if we create a sense of urgency. That's so intense that we're compelled to follow through. If we want to create change, then we have to realize that it's not a question of whether we can do it, but rather whether we will do it. Whether we will or not comes down to our level of motivation, which in turn comes down to those twin powers that shape our lives, pain and pleasure. So that's really important right there. I'm actually going to bookmark chapter 6 because these are important steps that you can literally just flip to and start to consider, like, hey, what do I want to change right now and how do I do it? Every change you've accomplished in your life is the result of changing your neuroassociations about what pain means pain and what means pleasure. So often, though, we have a hard time getting ourselves to change because we have mixed emotions about changing. On the one hand, we want to change. We don't want to get cancer from smoking. We don't want to lose our personal relationships because our temper is out of control. We don't want our kids to feel unloved because we're harsh with them. We don't want to feel depressed for the rest of our lives because of something that happened in our past. We don't want to feel like victims anymore. Wow, those are some really powerful ones. Like here, what I really wanted was a bit shallow, right? I just want to have a Twitch channel. I really want to grow a Twitch channel. But in consideration, there are people, maybe yourself, and probably maybe even deeper down in myself, but I'm just maybe unconsciously or whatever, not comfortable sharing it via live stream. Things that we really want to improve about ourselves. Yeah, I guess I could have a bad temper sometimes. That's something to improve on, and not really like a bad temper, but it's easy to get caught up in. When you work in customer service or when you work with the public, the general public, and you meet anybody who's been in retail for more than a couple of years or anybody who's worked in restaurants, they can quickly have a negative attitude and short fuse as it ties to interacting with people. They've probably had the most annoying reactions. I was talking to this woman the other day, and she was talking about how she's been working in retail, grocery stores, and she was saying how some homeless gentleman had come in and bear sprayed the manager and all the people around her because they were getting called out on a scam that they were trying to run. They were trying to use fake government stamps or something like that. So the guy had pulled out bear spray and just bear sprayed people in the store. And when situations like that, you got to think, what are they associating pain to? I mean, fortunately, lucky for that company, the woman is still working there, and she still seemed like a very happy and down-to-earth employee. But you got to really think in that situation, like, the people that come out of that maybe bitter, angry, annoyed, what are they associating with that? So, having been in the service industry myself, you can have a short fuse with people. Whereas, if you grew up as like the CEO's kid, or you grew up as son of a very successful and influential person where no one really questions what you do or your leadership ability, and you've never really worked in service, then you can have different challenges. You might have a different perspective on people, and or maybe even a shorter fuse, because you always expect people to do what it is that you want, that you expect. So anyway, what are we associating massive pain to, and what are we associating the massive pleasure to? And those are some good questions right there, especially as it comes to our job, our life. What do we associate pain as it associates to? Money, relationships, our career, and what about it is bringing us pain or pleasure? What about those things are bringing us pleasure? And things that we want, things that we don't have, things that we truly, truly want and desire. Not to worry about things that we don't want, but the things that we want in life. If we want to go after it, if we're stopping ourselves right now, which could be the instantaneous pain that we're considering, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we saying to ourselves that are causing pain and pleasure? So that's step number 2. Oh, and it's continued. I stopped it too soon. So on the other hand, we fear change. We wonder, what if I stop smoking cigarettes, but I die of cancer anyway, and I've given up the pleasure that cigarettes used to give me? That's a good question, huh? I've never been into cigarettes, but that's still a good question. Or what if I let go of this negative feeling about, and this is a very triggering subject, so, say this with that caveat here, so be prepared for this next sentence, but, or what if I let go of this negative feeling about the rape, and it happens to me again? We have mixed emotions where we link both pain and pleasure to changing, which causes our brain to be uncertain as to what to do, and keeps us from utilizing our full resources to make the kinds of changes that can happen literally in a moment if every ounce of our being were committed to them. How do we turn this around? One of the things that turns virtually anyone around is reaching a pain threshold. This means experiencing pain at such an intense level that you know you must change now. A point at which your brain says, I've had it. I can't spend another day, not in another moment, living or feeling this way. Have you ever experienced this in a personal relationship? For example, you hung in there, it was painful, and you really weren't happy, but you stayed in it anyway. Why, you rationalized that it would get better without doing anything to make it better. If you were in so much pain, why didn't you leave? Even though you were unhappy, your fear of the unknown was a more powerful motivating force. Yeah, I'm unhappy now, you may have thought, but what if I leave this person and then I never find anyone? At least I know how to deal with the pain I have now. Oof. Goodness gracious, that is some powerful stuff right there. Gonna put a box around that because it's interesting to think that you can be in so much pain, but simply having an uncertainty, not knowing what the future holds, can be even more pain than what you're having. And it also makes me think about that, at least for me personally, I have a lot of things that I don't necessarily feel like I need to change. I don't like smoke. I don't have anything like that I feel is necessary to change, except maybe like eating less fried food, right? It's bad for your arteries. But I love fried food. I guess that's something I should change, or could change if I want to live a more physically vital life. But at that time, have I built up enough pain to it? And I have built up some pain, but it really is a good time to consider what costs of what we want or do want, and what those costs are, and are we able to build up enough pain? Like, am I able to mentally create enough pain, or do I need to keep eating until something bad happens? And that could be a problem too. Like, if I've had situations where I'm gonna go push myself like physically until something tells me to stop, and that could be bad. I mean, that could manifest itself in other ways where someone might keep pushing their bodies. I'm talking not like physically, but emotionally unhealthy ways, physically unhealthy ways. They're going to keep smoking until and if or when they get cancer or whatever, and simply they need that pain in order to stop, or they need their child to be like, hey, I want to live, I want you to live, right? So some people need that pain, and they don't go for it. They're not able to create it themselves, so they keep doing the negative activity until something finally happens, until a person keeps stealing until somebody stops them, somebody puts them in jail, or things like that, or somebody finally helps them, right? A homeless person will keep doing whatever they're doing until they feel like they're not being seen on the streets, and they'll keep doing what they're going to do until somebody finally stops them or helps them in an effective way. And maybe, some of them don't want help, whatever, but some of them just don't know how to ask for it. That said, a lot of powerful ideas there. And just to wrap up this section, this kind of thinking is what keeps people from making changes. Finally, though, one day the pain of being in that negative relationship became greater than your fear of the unknown. So you hit a threshold and made the change. Maybe you've done the same thing with your body when you finally decided you couldn't spend another day without doing something about your excess weight. Maybe the experience that finally pushed you over the edge was your failure to be able to squeeze into your favorite pair of jeans, or the sensations of your thunder thighs rubbing against each other as you wallowed up a set of stairs, or just the sight of the bulbous folds of excess flesh hanging from the side of your body. Yeah, that was something that motivated me over quarantine. I probably put on about 15 or 20 pounds, and when I was going shopping for some pants, I had to go like 2 sizes up, and it was not a good feeling. I was trying to put on my old pants, and like as I walked, like I could feel the belt digging into my body, and it just did not feel good. It was so uncomfortable, and I just could not live with that. So I actually picked up running more actively, and that was around the time that I also found out I was having high cholesterol too. So unfortunately, I reached a point where I was like, this is not good. I need to do something about it. But at the same time, I really admire those people who are like, okay, I don't ever want to reach that point. I'm never gonna let myself go, so I'm just gonna keep going and pushing myself because I never want to experience that. And I think that's really powerful. Like, how did those people do that? That's a good question right there. How do the people who never reach a point where they're like, I have to, their mind is just constantly, I have to. The millionaires who are constantly on and like, I have to constantly make money. I have to grow my business. I have to do these things. And I'm never going to let myself, go back to wherever. And then there's people, I constantly have to pursue body perfection and all that. And I'm not saying all of those are healthy, right? Like if you're sacrificing your health for money, if you're sacrificing, your relationships and your actual physical well-being for physical fitness, like you're not eating properly, right? Like there's people that eat properly and are fit, but then there's people who are sacrificing their fitness, believing that they're looking fit. They're sacrificing, they're not eating because they think that super skinny is better, right? So there's ranges in these areas, but consider the wide range and where we are and where we want to be. The Alpo diet. It's a separate section in itself. Recently, a woman attending a seminar told me about her fail-safe strategy that she had developed for shredding unwanted pounds. She and a friend had committed over and over again to losing weight, but failed to keep their promise each and every time. Finally, they both reached a point where losing weight was a must. Based on what I taught them, they needed some leverage to push themselves over the edge. They needed to make not keeping their promise more painful than anything they could imagine. They decided to commit to each other and a group of friends that if they welched on their promise this time, they would each have to eat a whole can of Alpo dog food. Oh, gross. So to stave off any hint of a craving, these two enterprising women told everyone and kept their cans in plain view at all times as a constant reminder. She told me that when they started to feel hunger pangs, they'd pick up the can and read the label with ingredients boasting horse meat chunks. They found no difficulty in sticking to their commitment. They achieved their goal without a hitch. Okay, so that's a really good question there. Like, are we really willing to do something like that? They were willing to do something as nuts as that. Can you imagine that? Like, if I don't quit smoking, I have to, I don't know, do something disgusting like eat my cat's food for a week. Like, if you were able to commit yourself to that, or like if I'm not nice, or if I don't call my loved ones at least once a month for the next 3 months, or once a week, or 3 times a week. If I don't do that, then I have to pinch myself, or that's not that extreme, but like I have to sit in a mud field for an hour or something. I don't know, like it's hard to come up with these punishments. Who thinks of these things? That's pretty amazing that someone was willing to commit to that, because they would definitely be more committed to their fitness than to eating dog food. So horse meat. Oh, can you imagine that? That's disgusting. I would definitely, if I, good on them. Anyway, a lever is a device that we utilize in order to lift or move a tremendous burden we cannot otherwise manage. Leverage is absolutely crucial in creating any change, in freeing yourself from behavioral burdens like smoking, drinking, overeating, cursing, or emotional patterns like feeling depressed, worried, fearful, or inadequate, you name it. Change requires more than just establishing the knowledge that you should change. It's knowing at the deepest emotional and most basic sensory level that you must change. If you've tried many times to make a change and you failed to do so, this simply means that the level of pain for failing to change is not intense enough. You have not reached the threshold, the ultimate leverage. Alexa, what time is it?
It's 11:07 a.m.
When I was doing private therapy, it was imperative that I find the point of greatest leverage in order to help people make changes in one session that years of therapy had failed to accomplish. I started every session by saying that I couldn't work with anyone who wasn't committed to change now. One of the reasons was that I charged $3,000 for a session, and I didn't want them to invest their money unless they were absolutely going to get the result they were committed to today in this one session. Wow. All right. But here's what I think is funny is, to some people, $3,000 is not a lot of money. Like, yes, for most of us, for some people, $3,000 is a lot of money, but for some people, it's like, oh, I just need some motivation. I just need someone to tell me what to do. I just need someone to motivate me, to get me out of the slump. Like, some people pay. Earlier in his book, Tony Robbins was saying, like, the coach, where he would help people, he realized that he can't be responsible for people, who is able to help people in a single therapy session and keep them for the long term. People have to want to make that change, but at the same time, they have to be committed to that. So you can't help a person who doesn't want to commit to the change. So he made it very difficult for them, and ultimately that was probably part of the commitment area as well. Many times these people had flown in from some other part of the country, although I do believe that you can make people change, in a very extreme sense, but in order to help them, they also have to want part of it, and you're able to find that leverage somehow. Anyways, many times these people had flown in from some other part of the country. The thought of my sending them home without handling their problem motivated my clients to spend at least half an hour convincing me that they were indeed committed and would do anything to change now. With this kind of leverage, creating change became a matter of course. To paraphrase the philosopher Nietzsche, he who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how. I've found that 20% of any change is knowing how, but 80% is knowing why. If we gather a set of strong enough reasons to change, we can change in a minute something we failed to change for years. Give me a lever strong enough and a prop strong enough, I can single-handedly move the world. Archimedes. The greatest leverage you can create for yourself is the pain that comes from inside, not outside. Knowing that you have failed to live up to your own standards for your life is the ultimate pain. If we fail to act in accordance with our own view of ourselves, if our behaviors are inconsistent with our standards, with the identity we hold for ourselves, then the chasm between our actions and who we are drives us to make a change. The leverage created by pointing out an inconsistency between someone's standards and their behavior can be incredibly effective in causing them to change. It's not just pressure placed on them by the outside world, but pressure built up by themselves from within. One of the strongest forces in human personality is the drive to preserve the integrity of our own identity. Holy moly. So there's one concept right there where if you really want to get someone to change, you really got to know who they are, what they really want out of life, how they perceive themselves, and ultimately to share the things to really mirror or reflect that concept of themselves to themselves and to help them get there. It's a powerful idea right there. The reason so many of us seem to be walking contradictions, let's see, so learning about the other person, really learning what they want and how they see themselves. Then helping get there. I had to write this down as a note. That's a powerful idea right there. The reason so many of us seem to be walking contradictions is simply that we never recognize inconsistencies for what they are. If you want to help somebody, you won't access this kind of leverage by making them wrong or pointing out that they're inconsistent, but rather by asking them questions that cause them to realize for themselves their inconsistencies. This is a much more powerful lever than attacking someone. If you try to exert only external pressure, they'll push against it, but internal pressure is next to impossible to resist. This kind of pressure is a valuable tool to use on yourself. Complacency breeds stagnation. Unless you're extremely dissatisfied with your current pattern of behavior, you won't be motivated to make the changes that are necessary. Let's face it, the human animal responds to pressure. Yeah, the human animal responds to pressure. They do for sure. So why would someone not change when they feel and know that they should? They associate more pain to making the change than to not changing. To change someone, including ourselves, we must simply reverse this so that not changing is incredibly painful. Painful beyond our threshold of tolerance, and the idea of changing is attractive and pleasurable. To get true leverage, ask yourself pain-inducing questions. What will this cost me if I don't change? Most of us are too busy estimating the price of change. But what's the price of not changing? Ultimately, what will I miss out on in life if I don't make this shift? What is it already costing me mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually? Make the pain of not changing feel so real to you, so intense, so immediate that you can't put off taking that action any longer. If that doesn't create enough leverage, then focus on how it affects your loved ones, your children, and other people you care about. Many of us will do more for others than we'll do for ourselves. So picture in graphic detail how much your failure to change will negatively impact the people who are most important to you. The second step is to use pleasure associating questions to help you link those positive sensations to the idea of changing. If I do change, how will that make me feel about myself? What kind of momentum could I create if I change this in my life? What other things could I accomplish if I really made this change today? How will my family and friends feel? How much happier will I be now? The key is to get lots of reasons, or better yet, strong enough reasons why the change should take place immediately. Not someday in the future. If you are not driven to make the change now, then you don't really have leverage. Now that you've linked pain in your nervous system to not changing and pleasure to making the change, you're driven to create a change. You can proceed to the third master step of NAC. That's an interesting thing, and this is going to get a little controversial here because, anything that I say following this message, definitely take it with consideration. Don't go trying things without speaking to a doctor first, or certified physician, or someone, a healthcare practicing professional. But I learned something when I was doing a 5-day fast. I did a 5-day fast sometime last year. I actually tried a 5-day fast again this year, but I failed. I gave up after 2.5 days. But last year I did a 5-day fast. And it really made me think about the subject of hunger and how your body reacts to hunger. And it's interesting because on one hand, traditionally hunger comes from our need to eat, right? As humans, we need to eat. So during hunter-gathering societies, we had to work for it. We had to go pursue food. We had to go hunt for it. We had to, prepare our group of 3 to 5 people to go hunting lions or mammoths and, learn to cook and work as a group and everything. And we had to do that. But today, we can get food from anywhere. So it really made me question this idea of what's driving me as a person, right? So people used to have a drive to eat. There was a true hunger, a driving need to eat. But today, I can eat 3-4 meals a day, and I can feel hungry every single one of those meals. But research finds, the nutrition facts and all that aside, that humans don't necessarily need to eat 3, 4, 5 meals a day. Now, obviously, if you're bodybuilding, if you're a huge, a world-breaking athlete, if you're an Olympian, whatever, or you're training, physical training is intense, yes, you probably need more calories, but most people do not need as many calories as they eat. And it's interesting to think about what drives us to constantly eat more. Is it true hunger? And at the same time, if we allowed ourselves to be hungry, which I did, I forced myself to be hungry for 5 days, I was really curious as to the emotions that I felt around food. And I noticed that I was constantly thinking about food, but not really because I was truly hungry, right? Like I was hungry on day 1 and 2 as I was on day 4 and 5, right? The same hunger pains, the same hunger thoughts, the same discomforts affected me on day 1 as day 5. I wasn't starving that much more on day 3 than I was on day 5. Now I was very hungry, but I had a different type of energy, where I felt like I had to fill my time with something productive other than food. Now at one point I was like, I just want this to end. Can I sleep it away? Can I meditate it away? What do I have to do to make these next few days go faster? And at some level, I would take naps, I would do work, I would do more work. But it was a really interesting exercise on just considering the hunger pain connection as it ties to eating or overeating or health, wellness, and all those things. But back to we'll go ahead and do one more section and we'll save the last 3 for another day. But NAC Master Step 3, interrupt the limiting pattern. In order for us to consistently feel a certain way, we develop characteristic patterns of thinking, focusing on the same images and ideas, asking ourselves the same questions. The challenge is that most people want a new result but continue to act in the same way. I once heard it said that the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. Please don't misunderstand me. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed. And I suggest you avoid anyone who uses these metaphors to describe you. The resources you need to change anything in your life are within you right now. It's just that you have a set of neuroassociations that habitually cause you to not fully utilize your capability. What you must do is reorganize your neural pathways so that they consistently guide you in the direction of your desires rather than your frustrations and fears. To get new results in our lives, we can't just know what we want and get leverage on ourselves. We can be highly motivated to change, but if we keep doing the same things, running the same inappropriate patterns, our lives are not going to change and all we'll experience is more and more pain and frustration. So the limiting pattern. Okay, so there's a couple ideas here right now. So, all the ideas that he shared with us, that we need to get leverage, that we need to know what we associate pain and pleasure to, that we, need to find out what we really want. But then at the same time, that's still not enough, because we really have to condition ourselves. We have to create the habit. To get new results in our lives, we can't just know what we want and get leverage on ourselves. We have to try something different. And this already looks like a great example. Have you ever seen a fly that's trapped in a room? It immediately searches for the light, so it heads for the window, smacking itself against the glass again and again, sometimes for hours. Have you ever noticed people do this? They're highly motivated to change, they have intense leverage, but all the motivation in the world won't help if you try to get outside through a closed window. You've got to change your approach. The fly stands a chance only if it backs off and looks around for another exit. If you and I run the same old pattern, we're going to get the same old results. Record albums create the same sounds consistently because of their pattern, the continuous groove in which the sound is encoded. But what would happen if one day I picked up your record, took a needle, and scratched across it back and forth dozens of times? If I do this enough, there's a point when the pattern is so deeply interrupted that the record will never play the same way again. Likewise, just interrupting someone's limiting pattern of behavior or emotion can completely change their life, because sometimes it also creates leverage. The additional, and with these two steps alone, you can change virtually anything. The additional steps of NAC are just a way to make sure the changes last and that you develop new choices that are enjoyable and empowering. I created a fun pattern interrupt recently at one of my 3-day unlimited power seminars in Chicago. One man claimed that he really wanted to kick his chocolate habit, yet it was clear to me that he received a great deal of pleasure from his identity as a chocolate addict. In fact, he was even wearing a t-shirt that proclaimed, "I want the world, but I'll settle for chocolate." This provided strong evidence that this man, although he may have desired to stop eating chocolate, also had a great deal of secondary gain to maintain this habit. And before I read on, I gotta consider, they have made chocolate a part of their identity. That's pretty interesting. Sometimes people want to create a change because a behavior or emotional pattern creates pain for them, but they may also derive benefit from the very thing they're trying to change. If a person becomes injured, for example, and then suddenly everyone waits on them hand and foot, giving them a great deal of attention, they may find that their injuries don't heal quite as quickly. While they want to be over the pain, unconsciously, they want more of the pleasure of knowing that people care. I can do everything right, but if secondary gain is too strong, you will find yourself going back to the old ways. Someone with secondary gain has mixed emotions about changing. They say they want to change, but often they subconsciously believe that maintaining the old behavior or emotional pattern gives them something they couldn't get any other way. Thus, they're not willing to give up feeling depressed, even though it's painful. Why? Because being depressed gets them attention, for example. They don't want to feel depressed, but they desperately want attention. In the end, the need for attention wins out and they stay depressed. The need for attention is only one form of secondary gain. In order to resolve this, we have to give the person enough leverage that they must change, but also we must show them a new way to get their needs met. And here's an interesting point right here. Tony Robbins here talks about depression and how it can work. But I think ultimately this is just one example of how attention manifests in people, but it doesn't necessarily encapsulate everybody. And at least this is a way to recognize that a depression can be a serious issue. And I think this is compared to people that feel depressed and get attention through it versus people who are truly depressed, and there is a gap there. But with that said, I wonder if he clarifies that later. It is interesting to think about, though. But while on some level I'm sure this man knew he needed to kick chocolate, I'm also fairly certain that he knew he could use this opportunity to get some serious attention. Wow, yeah. If he suddenly associates as a chocolate, what did he call it? Chocolate addict, and people start laughing, that's a good way to get attention. While on some level, I'm sure this man knew he needed to kick his chocolate habit. I'm sure, fairly certain that he knew he could use this opportunity to get some serious attention. Maybe he had a business that was tied to chocolate. Anytime there's secondary gain involved, you have to set up the leverage, so I decided that a massive pattern interrupt would create the necessary leverage. Sir, I exclaimed, you're telling me that you're ready to give up chocolate? That's great. There's just one thing I want you to do before we eliminate that old pattern forever. He asked, what's that? I said, to get your body in the right condition, for the next 9 days you must eat nothing but chocolate. Only chocolate can pass your lips. People in the audience started giggling, and the man looked at me uncertainly. Can I drink anything? He asked. Yes, I said. You can drink water, 4 glasses a day, but that's all. Everything else must be chocolate. He shrugged his shoulders and grinned. Okay, Tony, if that's what you want, I can do this without changing. I hate to make a fool out of you. I smiled and continued with the seminar. You should have seen what happened next. As if by magic, dozens of chocolate bars and candies materialized out of people's pockets, purses, and briefcases and were passed down to him. By the lunch break, he had been inundated with every last morsel of chocolate in that auditorium. Baby Ruths, Butterfingers, Snickers, Milky Ways, M&Ms, Almond Joys, Fanny Farmer Fudge. He caught my eye in the lobby outside. Thanks, Tony. This is great, he proclaimed as he unwrapped and popped Hershey's Kisses into his mouth, determined to show that he could beat me. But he failed to realize that he wasn't competing with me. He was competing with himself. I was merely enlisting his body as an ally in getting leverage and breaking his pattern. Do you know how thirsty sugar makes you? By the end of the day, this guy's throat was absolutely raw, and he had definitely lost his passion for chocolate as people continued to shovel crackle bars into his pockets and press his palms with Thin Mints. Now, the second day, he definitely lost his sense of humor, but he wasn't yet ready to cry uncle. Have some more chocolate, I insisted. He unwrapped a Three Musketeers bar and glared at me. By the third morning, as he trailed into the auditorium, he looked like a man who had spent all night praying to the porcelain goddess. How was breakfast? I asked as people laughed. Not so good, he admitted weakly. Have some more, I said. Feebly, he accepted another piece of chocolate from someone sitting behind him, but he failed to open it or even look at it. What's the matter? I asked him. Fed up? He nodded. Come on, you're the chocolate champion, I goaded. Have some more. Isn't chocolate the greatest? How about some Mounds bars and some peanuts, M&Ms, and a whole box of Rocky Road fudge? Can't you just taste it? Doesn't it make your mouth water? The longer I talked, the greener he got. Have some more, I said, and finally he exploded. You can't make me! The audience laughed uproariously as the man realized what he'd said. All right, then. Throw the candy away and sit down. Later I came back to him and assisted him in selecting empowering alternatives to the chocolate, laying down some new pathways to pleasure that were empowering and didn't require him to consume something he knew wasn't good for him. Then I really got to work with him, conditioning the new associations and helping him replace his old addiction with a smorgasbord of healthful behaviors, power breathing, exercise, water-rich foods, proper food combining, and so on. Had I created leverage on this guy? You bet. If you can give someone pain in their body, that's undeniable leverage. Simultaneously, I broke his pattern. Everybody else was trying to get him to stop eating chocolate. I demanded that he eat it. That was something he never expected, and it massively interrupted his pattern. He rapidly linked such painful sensations to the idea of eating chocolate that a new neural pathway was laid down overnight, and his old Hershey highway was bombed beyond recognition. When I used to conduct private therapies, people would come to see me, sit down in my office, and begin to tell me what their problem was. They'd say, my problem is ... And then they'd burst into tears out of control. As soon as this happened, I would stand up and shout, excuse me! This would jolt them, and then I'd follow up with, we haven't started yet! Usually they responded, oh, I'm sorry. And they'd immediately change their emotional states and regain control. It was hysterical to watch. These people who felt they had no control over their lives would immediately prove that they already knew exactly how to change how they felt. One of the best ways to interrupt someone's pattern is to do things they don't expect. Things that are radically different from what they've experienced before. Think of some of the ways you can interrupt your own patterns. Take a moment to think up some of the most enjoyable and disruptive ways you can interrupt the pattern of being frustrated, worried, or overwhelmed. Next time you start to feel depressed, jump up, look at the sky, and yell your most idiotic tone of voice, "Hallelujah! My feet don't stink today." A stupid, silly move like that will definitely shift your attention, change your state, and will definitely change your states of everyone around you as they begin to realize that you're no longer depressed, just crazy. If you overeat on a regular basis and want to stop, I'll give you a technique that will definitely work, if you're willing to commit to it. The next time you find yourself in a restaurant overeating, jump up in the middle of the room, point at your own chair, and scream at the top of your lungs, "Pig!" I guarantee that if you do this 3 or 4 times in a public place, you won't overeat anymore. You'll link too much pain to this behavior. Just remember, the more outrageous your approach to breaking a pattern, the more effective it will be. One of the key distinctions to interrupting a pattern is that you must do it in the moment the pattern is recurring. Pattern interrupts happen to us every day. When you say, "I just lost my train of thought," you're indicating that something or someone interrupted your pattern of concentration. Have you ever been deeply involved in a conversation with a friend? Had someone interrupt you for a moment, then come back wondering, "Where were we?" Of course you have, and it's a classic example of a pattern interrupt. Just remember, if we want to create change and we've learned in the past to get pleasure by taking a circuitous route that includes a series of negative consequences, we need to break that old pattern. We need to scramble it beyond recognition. Find a new pattern, that's the next step, and condition it again and again until it becomes our consistent approach. And we're not necessarily on the next step yet, so we're going to continue on with this chapter until this very last step, step 4, or that's 4 out of 6, but how to break limiting patterns of feeling and acting. That's a good idea. Pattern interrupts. How can you interrupt this pattern that you're doing? Imagine that if every time you were about to eat fried foods, you jumped up on a chair and you said, "I'm a pig," or "I have high cholesterol and it's killing me," or something like that, right? Like you stood up on a chair and actually said that. You would stop. I mean, you would probably avoid eating more fried foods. But, there are certain things in life that we have to pick and choose what we really want to change. So that's just an example because I was eating way too much fried food at one point in my life. So I didn't necessarily have to go through that, but if you do need to do that, if you do need to do something as extreme as, saying, "I'm going to eat dog food if I don't stay committed to my physical fitness routine," maybe you need something like that. But not everyone does. How to break limiting patterns of feeling and acting. Again, often true, and maybe I'm giving excuses to people. I shouldn't be giving out excuses or ways out of doing something that that you need, should, want to do. Again, often true that interrupting a pattern enough sometimes can change almost anyone. A simple way of breaking a pattern is by scrambling the sensations we link to our memories. The only reason we're upset is that we're representing things in a certain way in our minds. For example, if your boss yells at you and you mentally rerun that experience the rest of the day, picturing him or her yelling at you over and over again, then you'll feel progressively worse. Why let the experience continue to affect you? Why not just take this record in your mind and scratch it so many times that you can't experience those feelings anymore? Maybe you can even make it funny. Try this right now by doing the following. Think of a situation that makes you feel sad, frustrated, or angry. Now do the first 2 steps of NAC, which we've already covered. If you feel bad now about the situation, how do you want to be able to feel? Why do you want to feel that way? What's been preventing you from feeling that way is the sensations you've linked to the situation. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could feel good about it? Now get some leverage on yourself. If you don't change how you feel about the situation, how will you continue to feel? Pretty lousy, I'll bet. Do you want to pay that price and continually carry around those negative sensations or upsets you have toward this person or situation? If you were to change now, wouldn't you feel better? Why not just take this record in your mind and scratch it? If you have a situation, that's really good because I realize that sometimes I get in a negative mood. and I enjoy the negative mood. And I can imagine that there are people who are like unconscious of the idea that they're enjoying their negative mood, that they're just living in it, that they're just living in their negative mood. It's not that it feels good. They intellectually know that it feels good. I intellectually know that a negative mood can sometimes feel good. It feels comfortable, content. My body just sits in this like brooding state, and it feels okay. It can be scary to break out of that. It can feel uncomfortable to break out of a natural, just a complacent state. I consider a complacent state like not negative, but just too comfortable. And you can sit and brood. And then it's powerful. Like, if I feel bad about that situation, if I don't feel happy about that situation, how do I want to be able to feel? At some level, I think I want to be able to feel that upset about the situation. But wouldn't feeling happy in that situation be better? I mean, whatever. I don't want to judge emotions here too much, but that was really just to consider, like, why do I want to feel to sit brooding in my anger sometimes? And it's a really good question for a lot of people, I think. And it may not be anger. It may be, I don't want to use the word depression because there's so many levels of depression that, you know, a lot of people have really used it as like an umbrella term for feeling sad. And there are truly people who have some real challenges with it. And so without using the word, to use another word, maybe a less powerful word, you know, to sit brooding, to feel upset about something. You know, why do I want to feel that way? What's preventing me from feeling better? Upset. What's preventing me from feeling less upset about the situation? Maybe it's I want to stay upset at whoever pushed my buttons, but I don't think that really helps, at least in this situation. But anyway, the scramble pattern. And now we're about to listen to the final idea in this section. We've gone pretty far here. So to clarify, this section is interrupting. How do you interrupt a limiting pattern that you have? The scramble pattern. You've got enough leverage. Now scramble the disempowering feelings until they no longer come up. After reading this, take the following steps. 1. See the situation in your mind that was bothering you so much. Picture it as a movie. Don't feel upset about it. Just watch it one time. See everything that happened. 2. Take that same experience and turn it into a cartoon. Sit up in your chair with a big silly grin on your face, breathing fully, and run the image backward as fast as you can so that you can see everything happening in reverse. If somebody said something, watch them swallow their words. I'm going to try to read this backward really quickly. Words there, swallow them, watch. If something said, if reverse in happening, everything see can you, that so can you, as fast as backward image D, run and fully breathing face, you're on grin, silly big, a with chair, you're in, up sit, cartoon, a into, it, turn, and experience, same, that, take. I'm going to try to read those words backwards just to switch things up. Strogret, wallows, swallow backwards is wallows. Met, kta, genitemos, dias, yadobemos, fi. I'm not going to read too much more backwards, but we'll continue here. Let's see. Let the movie run backward in very fast motion, then run it forward again in even faster motion. Now change the colors of the image so that everybody's faces are rainbow colored. If there's someone in particular who upsets you, cause their ears to grow very large like Mickey Mouse's, and their nose to grow like Pinocchio's. Do this at least a dozen times. Back and forth, sideways, scratching the record of your imagery with tremendous speed and humor. Create some music in your mind as you do this. Maybe it's your favorite song, or maybe some type of cartoon music. Link these weird sounds to the old image that used to upset you. This will definitely change the sensations. Key to this whole process is the speed at which you play back the imagery and the level of humor and exaggeration you can link to it. Now think about the situation that was bothering you and notice how you feel now. If done effectively, you'll easily have broken the pattern so many times you'll find it difficult or impossible to get back into those negative feelings. This can be done with things that have been both bothering you for years. It's often a much more effective approach than trying to analyze the whys and wherefores of a situation, which doesn't change the sensations you link to the situation. As simplistic as it seems, effectively scrambling a situation will work in most cases, even where trauma has been involved. Why does it work? Because all of our feelings are based on the images we focus on in our minds and the sounds and sensations we link to those specific images. As we change the images and sounds, we change how we feel. Conditioning this again and again makes it difficult to get back into the old pattern. One way of breaking the pattern is to just stop doing something. Go cold turkey. If you stop running a pattern again and again, the natural pathway will gradually dissipate. Once a neural connection is made, the brain will always have a pathway, but unless the path is used, it becomes overgrown, like anything else. If you don't use it, you begin to lose it. Now that you've broken the pattern that has been holding you back, you now have the open space too. And we'll continue this in another section, but my goodness, let's recap on those 3 big ideas of neuroassociative conditioning. Really powerful. Step 1, decide what you want and what's preventing you from having it. Step 2, get leverage. Associate massive pain to not changing now and massive pleasure to the experience of changing now. You might have to create a fake situation for yourself, or a real situation that if you don't commit, or that you fail to succeed, or reward yourself that the success is going to be so great that it's going to be awesome. You have to create those associations. Even if you have to make it up yourself, if someone else isn't creating it for you. Like, in workplace, getting fired is a big motivation, but in our regular lives, in our personal lives, in our non-professional lives, we don't have the luxury of a boss that tells us exactly what our goals should be, so we have to create our own. And NAC Master Step 2, and then finally you got to interrupt your the limiting pattern. So knowing exactly what's limiting you, what belief, what ideas we have about a situation. Say we want to make more money, but we have a fear of going to ask our boss for a raise. What exactly about that situation is preventing us? What's the limiting pattern? What's the limiting belief? Are we scared of our boss? If that's the case, you might not be working at the right company. Or do you feel undeserving of a raise at your job? If you don't feel deserving of it, how do you interrupt that limiting pattern? Maybe the next time that how do you interrupt that? I mean, you wouldn't go into your boss's office and stand up on a chair and say, I deserve a raise. That might cause pain, but to start associating more with having more money and break that limiting pattern. So you might have to see that situation, right? See the situation, it says, in your mind that was bothering you so much. Is it the conversation with the boss? Is it the fear of making more money than your coworkers, right? How your coworkers are going to feel? Is it feeling scared that you're going to have to work twice as hard for 5% more an increase in pay, right? So in a sense, you're going to have to scramble that pattern. So see the situation in your mind. Which situations are limiting you the most? And see those. And this is just the example of like asking for a raise at work, which is pretty common. Could be something else. Number 2, take that same experience and turn it into a cartoon. Take the idea of talking to your scary boss into a cartoon and see how that makes you feel. And then take the cartoon of your coworkers. If you had seen a coworker, like what is really limiting you in that situation? If you believe coworkers are going to be upset at you, is that a real situation that's happened in the past? Like, oh, Jerry makes so much money, blah, blah, blah. Make that a cartoon. And then 3, now think about the situation that was bothering you and notice how you feel now. So he went through an entire process of scrambling that, finding, knowing what you want, so getting leverage, and then scrambling the pattern. And those are some big ideas, and we'll go on into the next chapter here in another episode, probably on Monday here. But thanks for tuning in to this video. I hope it was very helpful, this reading of Awaken the Giant Within, and have a wonderful day.